In the vast expanse of the cosmos, where stars shimmered like diamonds scattered across an endless black velvet canvas, there existed a planet known as Zytheran. This alien world was unlike any other. Its skies glowed with hues of violet and gold, its forests were alive with crystalline trees that sang in whispers to the wind, and its oceans rippled not with water but with liquid light. The inhabitants of this realm were equally extraordinary. Towering beings with iridescent skin that shifted colors depending on their emotions, elongated limbs tipped with delicate claws, and eyes so large they seemed to hold entire galaxies within them. Among these beings stood Queen Valethra, ruler of the Zytherians and bearer of her people's most sacred title, the matriarch of eternal dawn. Valethra had ruled for centuries, her wisdom unmatched by anyone in her court. Her presence commanded awe, even among her own kind. She radiated an aura of unshakable authority, her voice carrying the weight of countless decisions made in the name of survival and prosperity. Yet beneath her regal exterior lay a deep loneliness, a yearning for something greater than the cycles of power and duty that governed her existence. She had seen countless warriors rise and fall under her command, witnessed battles won and lost, and endured the ebb and flow of alliances forged and broken. But none of it had ever stirred her soul the way she secretly hoped something might one day. On Earth, far from the surreal beauty of Zytheran, lived Kale Draven. A man shaped by hardship and fire, Kale bore scars both visible and invisible, each telling a story of survival against overwhelming odds. His life began in the shadow of war-torn lands, where he learned early on that strength wasn't just physical. It was mental, emotional, and spiritual. By the age of 25, Kale had become a legend among his people, revered for his unmatched skill in combat and his ability to lead others through chaos without faltering. He moved with precision, every step deliberate, every strike calculated, yet there was a raw intensity in his gaze that spoke of untold depths beneath his stoic demeanor. Kale's reputation reached beyond his home planet when humanity first encountered extraterrestrial life. The initial contact was fraught with tension, fear, and misunderstanding, but Kale emerged as a mediator between species, earning respect not just from humans but also from those who once viewed Earthlings as primitive. It was during one such diplomatic mission that fate would intertwine his path with Valethra's, a meeting neither could have anticipated, destined to reshape the course of two civilizations forever. The encounter unfolded amidst the ruins of an ancient battlefield, where time itself seemed to stand still. The air crackled with energy, remnants of past conflicts lingering in the atmosphere like ghosts unwilling to fade. Queen Valethra stepped forward, flanked by her elite guard, her towering form casting long shadows over the desolate landscape. Her soldiers moved with disciplined precision, their weapons humming faintly, ready for anything, or anyone, who dared challenge their sovereign. Yet when her piercing gaze fell upon the lone figure standing before her, all thoughts of protocol vanished. Kale Draven stood tall despite the imposing presence surrounding him. Clad in battle-worn armor etched with symbols of resilience, he exuded a quiet strength that defied the odds stacked against him. His dark hair was tousled by the wind, strands falling across his forehead as if framing the determination etched into his chiseled features. In his hand, he held no weapon, only a tattered banner bearing the insignia of unity, gifted to him by leaders across Earth as a token of hope. For a moment, silence reigned supreme, broken only by the distant echo of shifting debris. Then, without warning, Valethra froze. Her luminous eyes widened, pupils dilating as though overwhelmed by some unseen force. The color of her skin shifted rapidly, cycling through shades of silver and crimson, signaling emotions too complex for words. Her guards tensed, unsure what to make of their queen's reaction, but she silenced them with a single raised hand. Slowly, deliberately, Valethra lowered herself to one knee, bowing her head in an act of reverence so profound it left everyone, including Kale, stunned. No one spoke. No one dared breathe. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air, charged with questions none could yet answer. Why had the great queen of Zytheran knelt before a mere human? What did she see in Kale that others had missed? And more importantly, what did this mean for the fragile alliance teetering on the brink of collapse? As Kale processed the surreal scene unfolding before him, disbelief mingled with unease. He had faced countless adversaries throughout his life, weathered storms both literal and figurative, but nothing could have prepared him for the sight of an alien queen kneeling at his feet. His instincts screamed at him to react, to demand answers or assert dominance, but something deeper held him back. There was a strange gravity to Valethra's gesture, an authenticity that transcended cultural barriers and defied logic. Instead of acting out of reflex, Kale chose stillness, letting the moment stretch until it felt almost unbearable. Around them, the tension thickened like a storm cloud about to burst. Vaelithra remained motionless, her head bowed low, her breathing steady yet deliberate. Her guards exchanged uneasy glances, their weapons lowering slightly but not entirely relinquished. They whispered among themselves in hushed tones, their language melodic yet sharp, filled with confusion and concern. One of them stepped forward hesitantly, addressing their queen in a tone that wavered between deference and alarm. Vaelithra responded without raising her head, her voice soft yet commanding, silencing her attendant instantly. Kale's mind raced, trying to piece together what he had done, or perhaps what he represented, that warranted such an unprecedented display of submission. Was this some form of ritual unknown to humans? Or was it something more personal, tied to Vaelithra herself? His gaze flickered over the alien warriors surrounding him, noting how their expressions shifted from suspicion to curiosity. Despite their obvious unease, there was no hostility in their stance, not yet, at least. If anything, they seemed as bewildered as he was. The seconds stretched into minutes, each heartbeat amplifying the weight of the situation. Finally, Vaelithra stirred, lifting her head slowly to meet Kale's eyes. Her irises shimmered with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine, though whether it was fear or awe, he couldn't tell. She rose to her full height, towering over him like a living monument, yet her movements carried a grace that softened her imposing presence. For a fleeting moment, Kale wondered if she might speak, explain herself, or offer some clue to unravel the mystery. But instead, she simply extended a clawed hand toward him, palm open, an invitation, perhaps, or a test. Without hesitation, Kale stepped forward. Trust didn't come easily to him, but instinct told him this was not the time for caution. As his gloved hand touched hers, a surge of energy passed between them, subtle yet undeniable. It wasn't painful, nor was it pleasant. It simply was, existing somewhere beyond the realm of human comprehension. Around them, the guards stiffened again, their weapons rising fractionally as if bracing for conflict. But Vaelithra remained calm, her expression unreadable as she studied Kale with an intensity that bordered on reverence. "What is this?" Kale finally asked, his voice cutting through the charged silence. Though he knew she likely wouldn't understand his words, the question felt necessary, a tether to reality amidst the strangeness enveloping him. To his surprise, Vaelithra tilted her head slightly, as though considering his query. Then, with a fluid motion, she gestured toward her entourage, signaling them to lower their weapons. Whatever was happening, it was clear now that it went far beyond mere diplomacy. It was something primal, ancient, and deeply significant. In the wake of Vaelithra's unexpected actions, Kale found himself thrust into a whirlwind of uncertainty. The weight of her bowing before him lingered heavily on his shoulders, each passing moment stretching the silence into an almost unbearable tension. Her guards, initially poised for battle, now eyed him with a mixture of curiosity and caution, their earlier hostility tempered by their queen's inexplicable reverence. Kale's mind raced, attempting to decipher the layers of meaning behind her gesture. Was it respect, fear, or something else entirely? Each possibility swirled in his thoughts, leaving him more perplexed than before. The environment around them added to the surreal nature of the encounter. The ancient battlefield, littered with remnants of forgotten wars, seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Shadows danced unnaturally along the ground, and the air hummed with an eerie resonance that set Kale's nerves on edge. He glanced at the alien warriors, noting how their vibrant, shifting colors mirrored the chaotic emotions swirling around them. Their eyes, wide and filled with wonder, locked onto Kale and Vaelithra, silently questioning the unfolding drama. Queen Vaelithra, sensing the palpable tension, broke the silence with a series of melodic sounds, her voice resonating with a depth that echoed through the ruins. Although Kale couldn't understand her words, the intent behind them was clear. She was speaking to her people, perhaps explaining her actions or issuing commands. Her guards reacted immediately, stepping back to form a loose circle around the pair, creating a semblance of privacy while maintaining a vigilant watch. Kale, feeling the need to bridge the gap between them, took a cautious step closer to Vaelithra. "I don't know what you expect from me," he said, his voice firm but tinged with confusion. He spread his hands in a universal gesture of peace, hoping to convey his lack of hostile intent. Velethra observed him intently, her head tilting slightly as if analyzing every nuance of his demeanor. After a moment, she reached out with a clawed hand, gently touching the emblem on his chest, the symbol of unity that had been given to him by Earth's leaders. Her touch was featherlight, yet it carried an electric charge that made Kale's breath hitch. Her gaze met his again, and in that instant, Kale felt an unspoken connection, a thread of understanding woven silently between them. It wasn't verbal, nor was it fully comprehensible, but it was undeniably present. Velethra then turned to her guards, uttering another series of commands. They nodded in unison and began to disperse, leaving the two leaders alone amidst the ruins. The queen gestured towards a nearby structure, an archaic monolith that seemed to pulse with a soft, inner light. Understanding her silent invitation, Kale followed, his steps measured and deliberate. As they approached the monolith, Kale noticed intricate carvings etched into its surface, depicting scenes of celestial battles and triumphant figures. He paused, running his fingers over the cool stone, feeling the history embedded within it. Velethra watched him closely, her expression softening slightly as if pleased by his interest. She pointed to one of the carvings, a figure standing tall amidst a sea of bowed heads, and then back at Kale. The implication was clear, though the reason remained elusive. Feeling the tug of unanswered questions pulling at him, Kale decided to take a leap of faith. "If you can understand me," he began, his voice steady, "know that I seek only peace. Whatever significance I hold for you, let it be a foundation for unity between our peoples." As the words left his lips, he saw a flicker of emotion cross Velethra's face, something akin to relief or gratitude. She placed a hand over her heart and then extended it towards him once more, sealing an unspoken pact. With the immediate tension eased, Kale and Velethra embarked on a journey that took them deep into the heart of Zytheran. The planet revealed itself as a breathtaking tapestry of natural wonders, each vista more mesmerizing than the last. Towering crystalline spires jutted skyward, refracting light into dazzling rainbows that painted the landscape in ever-shifting hues. Rivers of liquid light wound through valleys dotted with bioluminescent flora, their gentle glow pulsing in rhythm with the planet's unseen heartbeat. Above, the twin suns cast an ethereal golden hue over everything, bathing the world in perpetual twilight. As they traveled, guided by Velethra's gestures and occasional melodic phrases, Kale absorbed the alien culture surrounding him. The Zytherians moved with an elegance that seemed almost choreographed, their elongated forms flowing gracefully through their environments. They communicated not just with words but with subtle shifts in their iridescent skin tones and expressive eyes, conveying emotions and intentions in ways that transcended language barriers. At times, Kale caught glimpses of children playing near glowing pools, their laughter ringing out like musical notes, harmonizing with the ambient symphony of the planet. Despite the beauty around him, Kale couldn't shake the sense of being an outsider. Everywhere they went, curious gazes followed him, some filled with awe, others with skepticism. Whispers trailed after them, growing louder as word spread of the human warrior who had somehow earned their queen's reverence. Velethra remained steadfast by his side, her towering presence offering both protection and reassurance. Occasionally, she would pause to address her people, her voice resonating with authority yet laced with warmth. Though Kale couldn't understand her words, the reactions of her subjects spoke volumes. They listened intently, nodding or bowing respectfully before returning to their tasks. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the land in a soft lavender glow, they arrived at a grand amphitheater carved into the base of a mountain. Thousands of Zytherians gathered there, their collective presence creating a hum of anticipation that vibrated through the air. Velethra led Kale to a raised platform at the center, where she turned to face her people. With a sweeping gesture, she introduced him, her voice rising and falling in cadences that stirred something primal within Kale. The crowd erupted into murmurs, their colorful skins shimmering with excitement. Suddenly, a group of elder Zytherians stepped forward, their aged forms marked by intricate patterns etched into their skin. One of them approached Kale, holding out a small, glowing orb. Tentatively, Kale accepted it, feeling its warmth seep into his palm. The elder then began chanting, the sound low and rhythmic, accompanied by others joining in harmony. As the chant grew louder, images began to form in Kale's mind, visions of ancient battles, celestial alignments, and a prophecy foretelling the arrival of a star-born warrior. The realization hit him like a thunderclap. Somehow, he fit into this cosmic narrative, though the specifics eluded him. Overwhelmed, Kale looked to Vaelithra for guidance. She met his gaze, her eyes reflecting a mixture of pride and sorrow. Reaching out, she placed a hand on his shoulder, grounding him. The ceremony continued, culminating in a ritual dance performed by the elders, their movements synchronized with the pulsating lights of the amphitheater. When it ended, the crowd erupted into cheers, their voices blending into a jubilant chorus. Vaelithra turned to Kale once more, her expression resolute. She pointed to the stars above, then to him, and finally to herself. Whatever connection bound them, it was clear that their destinies were intertwined. That night, under the canopy of glittering constellations unique to Zytheran, Kale sat beside Vaelithra atop a hill overlooking the city. The air was cool and fragrant, carrying hints of exotic blossoms and metallic undertones. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of the day's revelations settling over them like a shared secret. Vaelithra occasionally glanced at Kale, her luminous eyes searching his face as if trying to memorize every detail. Kale, in turn, studied her, marveling at the complexity of her emotions conveyed through subtle shifts in her skin's iridescence. "I wish I understood," Kale murmured, breaking the quiet. His voice was soft, almost lost in the gentle rustle of crystalline leaves nearby. Vaelithra tilted her head, regarding him with an expression that seemed to straddle curiosity and compassion. She reached out tentatively, her clawed fingers brushing against his armored forearm. The gesture was hesitant yet deliberate, as if testing boundaries she wasn't sure existed. Kale didn't pull away. Instead, he covered her hand with his own, feeling the contrast between their forms, the roughness of his calloused palm against the smooth, cool texture of her skin. Vaelithra's eyes widened slightly, and her skin shifted to a warm amber hue, a color Kale had come to associate with contentment or approval. He smiled faintly, realizing how much he'd already learned to read her without words. "You've shown me kindness," he continued, his tone earnest. "Respect. Things I didn't expect when I came here." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "But I can't help wondering, why me? What is it about me that makes you?" He gestured vaguely, encompassing her earlier display of reverence and the events of the day. "All of this." Vaelithra exhaled slowly, her breath misting in the cool night air. She withdrew her hand and placed it over her chest, tapping lightly against the spot where her heart would be. Then, she pointed to the stars above, tracing an invisible line between constellations. Kale followed her gaze, squinting at the unfamiliar patterns. Some of the stars pulsed faintly, their light fluctuating in rhythm with the hum of the planet below. "Is it written in the stars?" he asked, half joking but genuinely curious. Vaelithra nodded emphatically, her skin flaring briefly to a bright cerulean before fading back to amber. Encouraged, Kale pressed further. "A prophecy? Something your people believe in?" She hesitated, her brow furrowing slightly, a rare display of uncertainty. Then, with deliberate slowness, she mimicked drawing symbols in the air, shapes that resembled the carvings on the monolith they'd visited earlier. Kale recognized one of them instantly, the emblem of the Starborn warrior. He nodded, understanding dawning on him. "So it's not just about me," he said thoughtfully. "It's about destiny? Fate?" Vaelithra inclined her head, her expression softening. She leaned closer, close enough that Kale could feel the faint vibration of her voice as she emitted a series of melodic notes. The sound resonated deeply within him, bypassing language entirely. It wasn't a song exactly, but rather a cascade of emotions, hope, longing, determination, all woven together in a way that transcended words. For a moment, Kale forgot they hailed from different worlds. All he felt was the raw honesty of her communication. When the melody faded, Kale found himself smiling despite the gravity of the situation. "You're incredible," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your strength, your wisdom. I've never met anyone like you." Vaelithra's skin flushed a deep crimson, a shade Kale hadn't seen before. It struck him then that perhaps she wasn't used to such direct praise, or maybe she simply hadn't expected it from him. Their conversation drifted naturally into lighter topics, facilitated by gestures and shared glances. Kale recounted stories of Earth, describing its varied landscapes and cultures, while Velethra responded with descriptions of Zytherian's wonders, using her hands to mimic the flight of luminescent creatures or the sway of crystalline trees. Laughter bubbled up between them, bridging gaps neither had realized existed until now. Yet beneath the camaraderie lay an unspoken acknowledgement of the challenges ahead. Both knew that forging peace between their species wouldn't be easy, especially given the mistrust and fear that lingered on both sides. As the night wore on, Kale felt the weight of responsibility settle more firmly on his shoulders. He glanced at Velethra, who sat quietly beside him, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "We'll do this together," he said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. Velethra turned to look at him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, or perhaps just the reflection of starlight. Whatever the case, she nodded, her grip tightening briefly on his arm before releasing it. Together, they sat in companionable silence, watching as the twin moons rose high into the sky, casting dual shadows across the land. The bond between them, fragile yet undeniable, continued to grow, rooted not in duty or obligation but in mutual respect and understanding. And though neither voiced it aloud, both sensed that this was only the beginning of a journey far greater than either could have imagined. As dawn approached, painting the horizon with streaks of fiery orange and deep indigo, Kale and Velethra descended from the hilltop, their footsteps synchronized in an unspoken rhythm. Below, the city stirred to life, its inhabitants emerging from crystalline dwellings to begin their daily routines. The streets buzzed with activity, yet an underlying tension lingered in the air, a reminder of the fragile peace they sought to build. Word of Kale's presence had spread like wildfire, igniting both hope and suspicion among the Zytherians. Some regarded him with admiration, seeing him as a harbinger of unity, while others viewed him with distrust, wary of the changes his arrival might bring. Velethra navigated the crowded thoroughfares with practiced ease, her towering form parting the throng like a ship cleaving through waves. She moved with purpose, her strides confident yet unhurried, ensuring Kale kept pace beside her. Her guards trailed discreetly behind, their weapons holstered but their vigilance unwavering. Despite the protective barrier they formed, Kale couldn't shake the sensation of being scrutinized. Every glance, every murmur felt loaded with implications he couldn't fully grasp. Yet Velethra's steady presence anchored him, her proximity a silent promise that she would shield him from harm. Their destination soon became apparent, a sprawling citadel perched atop a plateau, its spires reaching skyward like the claws of some ancient beast. The structure gleamed with an otherworldly luster, its surface composed of interwoven metals and minerals that caught the light in mesmerizing patterns. As they ascended the winding path leading to its entrance, Kale noticed the intricate carvings adorning the walls, scenes depicting cosmic events, celestial beings, and what appeared to be acts of creation. He paused momentarily to study one panel in particular, where a figure resembling him stood alongside a radiant entity, their hands joined in a gesture of unity. The resemblance sent a chill down his spine, reinforcing the notion that his role in this unfolding drama was far from coincidental. Inside the citadel, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The bustling energy of the city gave way to an almost reverent stillness, broken only by the soft echoes of their footsteps on polished floors. Hallways stretched endlessly in every direction, lined with tapestries and artifacts that hinted at Zytherian's storied past. Velethra led Kale to a chamber at the heart of the complex, its entrance flanked by towering statues of previous queens, their faces serene yet commanding. Beyond the threshold lay a circular room bathed in diffused light, its walls adorned with holographic projections of starscapes and planetary systems. At the center stood a massive table carved from translucent stone, etched with constellations that glowed faintly in response to movement. Here, Velethra stopped, turning to face Kale with an expression that brooked no argument. She gestured for him to sit, her movements precise and deliberate. Once seated, she activated a control panel embedded in the table's surface, summoning a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Planets, moons, and asteroid fields materialized above the table, rotating slowly as if caught in an eternal dance. Kale leaned forward, captivated by the display, his fingers itching to touch the shimmering orbs hovering inches above the surface. Velethra began speaking, her melodic voice weaving through the silence like a thread pulling fabric taut. Though Kale couldn't understand her words, the urgency in her tone was unmistakable. She pointed to various locations on the map, highlighting regions of conflict and areas of potential alliance. Several times, she paused to gauge his reaction, her luminous eyes searching his face for signs of comprehension. When Kale nodded or offered a thoughtful hum, her posture relaxed slightly, encouraged by his engagement. Eventually, she focused on a cluster of planets near the edge of the map, their representations flickering erratically. Kale frowned, leaning closer to examine them. One planet in particular caught his attention, a blue-green orb surrounded by rings of debris. It pulsed faintly, its light dimmer than the others. Without thinking, he reached out and tapped it, causing the projection to expand. The planet resolved into greater detail, revealing scars of devastation, craters, fissures, and swirling storms that suggested recent cataclysmic events. Velithra's reaction was immediate. Her skin shifted to a deep crimson, and she uttered a sharp phrase that drew startled looks from the guards stationed at the edges of the room. She jabbed a clawed finger at the planet, her gaze locking onto Kale's with an intensity that demanded action. Realization dawned on him slowly, piecing together fragments of information gleaned from their earlier interactions. This planet, whatever its name or significance, was central to the crisis threatening both their worlds. And somehow, he was meant to play a pivotal role in addressing it. Kale straightened, his resolve hardening. Whatever doubts or fears had plagued him before now receded, overshadowed by the magnitude of the task ahead. He turned to Velithra, meeting her fierce gaze with equal determination. "Show me what I need to know," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil brewing within him. Velithra inclined her head, her expression softening marginally. With a wave of her hand, she summoned additional data streams, flooding the table with information about the planet's history, its resources, and the forces arrayed against it. Together, they pored over the details, their combined focus forging a tentative plan, one that would require courage, sacrifice, and an unyielding belief in the possibility of unity. Outside the citadel, the suns climbed higher, casting their golden light over a world poised on the brink of transformation. Within the chamber, two leaders from vastly different realms worked side by side, their fates irrevocably intertwined. The road ahead promised to be fraught with peril, but for the first time since arriving on Zytheran, Kale felt a spark of hope, a fragile flame fueled by trust, shared purpose, and the unshakable conviction that together they could forge a future worth fighting for. Hours bled into days as Kale immersed himself in the intricacies of Zytheran society, guided by Velithra's unwavering patience and insight. The alien queen proved to be an exceptional mentor, her vast knowledge spanning centuries of governance, warfare, and diplomacy. She introduced him to the Council of Elders, a group of sage-like beings whose wisdom had steered Zytheran through countless crises. Their meetings were intense, often lasting late into the night, as Kale absorbed strategies for negotiation, resource management, and conflict resolution. Each session deepened his understanding of the delicate balance required to maintain peace in a world as complex as Zytheran. Velithra also arranged for Kale to witness the planet's defenses firsthand. They toured colossal orbital stations, where fleets of sleek, angular ships patrolled the skies, their surfaces shimmering with adaptive camouflage. Engineers demonstrated advanced weaponry capable of neutralizing threats without causing irreparable damage, a philosophy Kale admired deeply. He spent hours discussing tactics with military leaders, learning how Zytherians prioritized preservation over annihilation, a stark contrast to many of Earth's historical conflicts. These lessons weren't merely theoretical. They were practical tools he knew he'd need to wield effectively in the coming trials. Yet, amidst the strategic planning and tactical training, moments of levity surfaced unexpectedly. During breaks between sessions, Kale discovered Velithra's playful side, a trait hidden beneath her regal exterior. She delighted in showing him peculiar aspects of Zytheran culture, such as communal dances performed under the twin moons or ceremonies involving offerings to the crystalline trees. On one occasion, she challenged him to a friendly competition involving a game played with floating orbs of light. Kale laughed heartily as he stumbled through the rules, his clumsy attempts eliciting amused chuckles from Velithra and her attendants. These shared experiences fostered a camaraderie that transcended their roles as leaders, allowing them to connect on a more personal level. However, not all interactions were light-hearted. As news of their collaboration spread, dissenting voices grew louder. A faction within the Zytheran ranks opposed any alliance with humans, viewing Earth as unpredictable and dangerous. Protests erupted outside the citadel, with chants calling for Kale's expulsion echoing through the corridors. Velithra faced mounting pressure from her advisors, some of whom questioned her judgment in trusting a foreign warrior. Yet, she remained steadfast, defending her decision with impassioned speeches that highlighted the necessity of unity in the face of looming threats. Kale, too, encountered resistance. Messages from Earth arrived sporadically, relaying concerns from human leaders skeptical of his partnership with Valethra. Some accused him of abandoning humanity's interests, while others feared he was being manipulated by alien agendas. Despite these criticisms, Kale refused to waver. He penned detailed reports outlining the benefits of cooperation, emphasizing the technological advancements and cultural exchanges that could arise from mutual understanding. His arguments, bolstered by Valethra's insights, gradually began swaying opinions, though progress was slow and fraught with setbacks. Through it all, Kale and Valethra grew closer, their bond strengthening with each challenge overcome. They developed a shorthand of sorts, communicating through gestures and expressions when words failed. Valethra taught Kale basic phrases in her language, which he practiced diligently, delighting her with his earnest attempts. In return, Kale shared tales of Earth's history, highlighting humanity's capacity for innovation and resilience. These exchanges created a bridge between their worlds, fostering empathy and mutual respect. One evening, as they reviewed plans in the Citadel's war room, Valethra paused, her luminous eyes studying Kale intently. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly gentle despite her formidable claws. "You are stronger than you realize," she said, her voice resonating with conviction. Though Kale couldn't fully grasp her words, the sentiment was unmistakable. He smiled, covering her hand with his own. "And you are wiser than anyone gives you credit for," he replied, his tone earnest. In that moment, surrounded by maps and holograms, they acknowledged the depth of their partnership, not just as allies, but as friends bound by a shared vision of peace. As the days turned into weeks, the weight of impending conflict loomed larger, casting shadows over their burgeoning alliance. Yet, Kale and Valethra pressed onward, driven by a determination to shape a future where their peoples could coexist harmoniously. Their journey was far from over, but together, they faced the unknown with courage and hope, ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead. The final days before the decisive confrontation were a blur of preparation and tension. Kale and Valethra worked tirelessly, refining their strategy to address the looming threat that hung over both their worlds. The planet they had identified earlier, the one flickering weakly on the holographic map, was revealed to be a nexus of instability, its resources coveted by rival factions across the galaxy. These factions, emboldened by greed and desperation, had begun encroaching upon Zytherian's borders, testing the resolve of its people. Worse still, intelligence suggested that Earth itself might become collateral damage if the conflict escalated unchecked. Valethra convened an emergency council meeting, gathering representatives from every corner of her realm. The chamber buzzed with urgency as leaders debated plans for defense and diplomacy. Kale stood at Valethra's side, his presence commanding attention despite his human form. He spoke passionately, advocating for a dual approach: fortify Zytherian's defenses while extending olive branches to neutral parties who could mediate peace talks. His words carried weight not because he was persuasive, but because his sincerity resonated deeply with those listening. Even skeptics found themselves nodding in agreement, moved by his unwavering belief in unity. Meanwhile, Kale reached out to Earth's leaders, transmitting detailed reports of the situation and urging them to prepare without provoking panic. His messages emphasized cooperation rather than isolation, framing the crisis as an opportunity to demonstrate humanity's potential as a force for good. Slowly, cautiously, Earth responded. Fleets of human ships began assembling near the edge of Zytherian's solar system, ready to support their alien allies without overstepping boundaries. It was a delicate balancing act, one that required constant communication and trust, a testament to how far Kale and Valethra had come since their first encounter. As the day of reckoning approached, Kale and Valethra shared quiet moments together amidst the chaos. They walked through the crystalline gardens within the citadel, finding solace in the serene beauty around them. One evening, under the glow of the twin moons, Valethra turned to Kale with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. "If we succeed," she said, her voice soft yet resolute, "it will change everything." Kale nodded, understanding the gravity of her statement. Success meant more than averting disaster. It meant forging a new era of collaboration between species, bridging divides thought insurmountable. But failure. Failure would mean devastation beyond measure. When the battle finally came, It erupted with ferocity unmatched by anything Kale had ever witnessed. Enemy ships descended upon Zytheran like a swarm of locusts, their weapons firing beams of energy that tore through the atmosphere. The orbital stations activated, deploying shields and countermeasures to protect the planet below. Explosions lit up the sky, casting eerie shadows over the landscape as the two forces clashed in a symphony of destruction. Kale fought alongside Velethra's warriors, his combat skills proving invaluable in close-quarters engagements aboard enemy vessels. Together, they led daring boarding actions, disabling key systems and sowing confusion among the invaders. Each victory was hard-won, each loss felt acutely, but Kale refused to falter. Every time doubt crept into his mind, he glanced at Velethra, her towering figure cutting through adversaries with grace and precision. Her faith in him fueled his determination, pushing him beyond his limits. Back on the ground, Earth's fleet played a crucial role, intercepting reinforcements and providing critical support to Zytherian's defenders. Human pilots coordinated seamlessly with alien counterparts, their combined efforts turning the tide of the battle. Communication lines crackled with voices speaking different languages, yet united by a single purpose: survival. The turning point came when Kale and Velethra infiltrated the flagship of the enemy commander, a ruthless warlord known only as Zyrak. Disguised in stolen uniforms, they navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the massive vessel, evading patrols and disabling security systems. When they reached the command center, they found Zyrak surrounded by advisors, plotting the next phase of his assault. Without hesitation, Kale launched himself into action, engaging the guards while Velethra confronted Zyrak directly. The battle was fierce, blades clashing and energy blasts illuminating the dimly lit room. Kale fought with everything he had, channeling years of training and experience into every strike. Meanwhile, Velethra dueled Zyrak in a display of raw power and elegance, her movements fluid and calculated. Sparks flew as their weapons met, the air thick with tension. Finally, with a swift, decisive blow, Velethra disarmed Zyrak, pinning him to the floor. Breathing heavily, she loomed over him, her eyes blazing with authority. "This ends now," she declared, her voice echoing through the chamber. Zyrak sneered, defiant even in defeat, but the arrival of reinforcements sealed his fate. Surrounded and outnumbered, he surrendered, ordering his remaining forces to stand down. With the immediate threat neutralized, Kale and Velethra returned to Zytherian's surface, where celebrations erupted spontaneously. Crowds gathered in streets and squares, cheering for their heroes. For the first time in what felt like ages, hope filled the air, palpable and undeniable. Leaders from both Earth and Zytherian convened to formalize a lasting alliance, signing treaties that promised mutual protection and cooperation. The fragile bond forged in fire had blossomed into something unbreakable. In the aftermath, Kale stood beside Velethra atop the same hill where they had shared their first night together under the stars. Below, the city sparkled with renewed vitality, its inhabitants embracing a future no longer clouded by fear. Velethra placed a hand on Kale's shoulder, her touch warm and reassuring. "We did it," she said simply, her voice brimming with emotion. Kale smiled, looking out at the horizon bathed in golden light. "Not just us," he replied. "Everyone. Together." And for the first time in his life, Kale truly understood the meaning of unity, not as a concept or ideal, but as a living, breathing reality. As he gazed at Velethra, her iridescent skin glowing softly in the sunlight, he realized that their journey was far from over. But whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side, bound by a connection that transcended worlds.